think I have a problem. As soon as I get my hands on a new coffee tool, I just can't help myself. I dig in, I push all the buttons, and I'm not really satisfied until I find the breaking point. Well, thankfully, I haven't broken my Nucleus Link yet. This little roaster can take a beating, but I've definitely pushed it to the limit, and I've learned a ton about it along the way. So, why don't we dive a little deeper into the Nucleus Link together.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Captain's Coffee. I'm David, and today we're once again talking about the Nucleus Link. I've worked out a method of converting the Link's profiles to handle 200 grams so you can still use the app and the density tube to help you pick a profile and get within a few seconds of the system's targets. And of course, I'll have a demo at the end of the video so you can see it in action. And as usual, I will have timestamps down below so you can skip around, but keep in mind, the idea behind this is to push the roaster to its limits. So I'd strongly recommend you watch the whole video first so you have a solid foundation on how the software and the roaster work. Hey, hi, David from the future here. Quick edit. This used to be all one video with our other Link Studio video, but that video was nearly an hour long, so we split them up to make them a little more easily digestible. So if you feel lost here, please go back and watch the intro to the Link Studio video that we did. That will hopefully fill in some gaps for you. So back to the video. Just before we jump into this video, I have to give a quick shout out to this video's sponsor, you. That's right. Videos like this are entirely supported through your likes, your subscribes, and your shoppings at our store, thecaptainscoffee.com, where you can pick up roasters like the Link, as well as raw green coffee to roast in them. Purchasing coffee roasters and merch from our store gives us the means to make these helpful videos, so thank you for your continued support. I mean, it's a win-win. You get amazing coffee to roast at home. We get to keep making these videos that help you roast amazing coffee at home. It's the circle of coffee life. If you thought I was going to sing a copyrighted song on this video, you got another thing coming. I know you know the song. Yeah, it'll be stuck in your head for the rest of the day. So, you're welcome. All right, and as promised, it's time to show you how I have converted my batches to 200 gram batches when I want to do that. And it's a 4-step process. I'll explain the steps and then kind of give a summary at the end. And of course, I'll talk more about this during our demo roast. So don't feel like you have to understand all of this now, but do make sure you feel comfortable understanding it before you go to changing things. It's always better safe than sorry. And you can do these changes to any of the profiles. You can do it to the default profile if you just want a plug and play, just a default to try with anything. But the goal here was to make it so that you could customize the official profiles so that you could turn them into 200 gram profiles. And so that's what I went for, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do. So step 1, let's load up our desired profile. So we've got our coffee, we use the app, we use the density tube, and we decided we want to use a filter profile pack for our coffee. That's one I use a lot. We'll use it as an example. And the app suggested that we use, in this example, 204. And so we'll load that up into the Studio software. And here we see it as a customizable curve. Now, the first thing you're going to need to do once you get loaded in is make sure that you are on engineer difficulty for this. We will need access to a couple of the options that are only available in engineer mode. Don't worry. Again, it will pop up with warnings if you've changed anything that could be disastrous to your roast. All right, step 2, we need to change the fan profile curve. We need a lot more RPMs out of this fan to move a lot more bean mass. Now the mechanical limit to this fan is 18,000 RPMs or 1800 displayed here. And I don't like to stay at the limit If I can help it, it feels like it should push it too hard. And as you can see, if you try to go over that, let's say if we try to go to 1900, 19,000 RPMs, it just pops us back down to 18. So I like to start just below that. Seems to be working well for me to get good movement at the beginning of the roast. So this first one I changed to 1790, as well as this second one here. And then this point, I'm simply going to raise to 1720. And the final point, I will raise to 1660. As you can see, we have the same basic shape of curve here. It's a little more shallow. We need a lot more air throughout the roast in order to move this much mass, but I'm not having any trouble with the rest of the settings, keeping the PID on target. Next thing we're going to need to do is under about this file, go ahead and change the name here. I like to keep it kind of the same, just to help me know. We'll call this FB 200 grams, filter B 200 grams. Of course, change the designer name to your name. And anything you want in the description. If this is your first time trying it, just call it a test one or whatever is helpful to you. And finally, step 3, so not finally, ignore that. We are going to go ahead and create a zone in the curve. Now these zones are areas within the roast curve during the course of the roast that you can have a little more control. You can take some control away from the PID controller and give it a little more room to breathe. The problem we have with this much more thermal mass is that since the machine was built around 100 grams as the default, the PID is sort of calibrated to that. And we need more wiggle room for the PID to let the temperature drop or the ROR to decrease further. Because the problem I was having is that from about the 4.5 minute mark on, the roast was just taken off. It would get over the curve and stay over the curve and just get a lot hotter than the default. So from about the 4.5 minute mark till whenever your roast is ended, or whenever you expect you might need, if you're doing a very long, say espresso profile pack, you might want to make this 12, 15 minutes, as long as you need it to get to the end of the roast. We're going to create this zone. And within the zone, we are going to activate the boost function. Now, you might think of boost as allowing the ROR to increase. We actually want to allow the ROR room to decrease so that it doesn't kick into being concerned about there being a crash in our ROR, which is a much bigger concern when we've got a lot less bean mass to have a lot more momentum in the roast. But we've got so much bean mass and thermal energy that we actually needed a little more wiggle room to come down. So -5 has great results for me if it's like a washed or anything like that. And I've had to drop as far as -10 for an anaerobic natural. -7 or 8 is always a safe place to start. If you find yourself staying, with the curve riding way above the ideal curve, then you might want to come in here and drop that a little lower. As far as -10, I haven't seen any crashes in my ROR down to -10. And the fourth step is to change our cooldown speeds. We've got a lot more beans in there that are going to fill that chamber up. So we don't want our fan speed this high when we go into cool mode, or else they might kick up into the chaff collector. We're going to drop that down to 16.6. But as the beans cool, they are harder and harder to move. So we want to raise it up at the end of the roast, kind of the opposite, or raise it up at the end of the cooling section, kind of the opposite of a normal 100 gram batch. And along with that, I'm going to make this cool down low temperature. That's the period where it switches from this speed to this speed. I'm going to raise that to 250 so it swaps to this speed earlier. And make sure we have plenty of movement to cool. All right, quick review. Step 1, load the profile pack you want based on the density tube and the app, as well as switch your difficulty to engineer. Step 2, raise your fan profile curve. All 4 points that are already on here, we'll keep it simple. Just use those 4 points. Raise these two to 1790, this point to 7200, and this one to 1660. And of course, keep in mind, I am shortening this. This is 16,600 RPMs. But down here, there'll be 10 dropped off. You don't have to type the last 0 here. However, you do have to type it here. So remember that. And it will warn you if you try to save it with it 10,000 RPMs low. Don't worry. And you're going to want to change the name. Step 3, create a zone starting at about 4.5 minutes till end of your roast with a -5 to -10 boost. And step 4, change your cooldown speeds to a lower high speed and a higher low speed. And raise our cooldown low temperature to about 250 degrees Fahrenheit. And then, of course, we'll just click Save to Roaster. It'll show what we'll display on the front of our roaster when it's playing. And just click OK and give it a name to load up. And you're good to go. All right, it's finally time to put my money where my mouth is and share a roast demo. As I always say, this method is working great for me under my conditions across multiple coffees, different processes, and profile packs. But your mileage may vary depending on your coffee and your roasting environment. I'm sure as I continue testing it and I get more feedback from other Link users, I'll refine it and I'll share any updates with you. Now, there are 2 disclaimers I want to get out of the way that you should keep in mind if you want to try this for yourself. First, I imagine there's going to be a bit more wear on the machine's components over time, since we are pushing it to its operational limits. That being said, I've now done nearly 50 roasts with over 100 gram batches with the Link, and it's been holding up great for me with 0 issues. Second disclaimer, with extremely chaffy coffees like anaerobic naturals, there's always the very small risk of a chaff fire with any roaster. But in the Link, with 200 gram batches, these very chaffy coffees will increase this risk because all that chaff will fill that chaff collector to the brim. So keep it on your roaster, have a fire extinguisher handy. Again, I feel like this is a situation you should always be prepared for around kitchen appliances. So consider this your yearly fire safety reminder. Now, with the CYA out of the way, let's get into our demo. So the coffee we're going to work with today is a pink bourbon from Colombia. Palo de Rosa is the farm. It's fully washed, really nice and easy to work with. So perfect for us to test. First thing we got to do, measure the density and enter that into our app to get a recommended profile from Nucleus. Just going to level that off, make sure it's nice and level. And we're going to get 63.9. Go ahead and punch that into our app. We're going to use Omni today. And that way we kind of can cover a lot of ground and really test this. 110 volts. Pink. Bourbon. Done. All right, we got 204. A filter range of 13 to 15%. Let's see what we can do with that. All right, the first thing we need to do is to get a 100 gram sample. Because this is going to be our control roast. Got to have a control to compare our 200 gram conversion method to. Only way to get one is to roast one. So here we go, 100 grams going in. And I'm just going to use the studio software to load this in, like we talked about. Open that, click Profiles, Make sure my pack is on Omni. And go with 204. And, oh, messed up there. Let's try one more time. 204, load that in. Great. So that one should be on the front of our roaster, and all we need to do is hit play twice. All right, folks, David from the future here, popping by for some color commentary during our roast, and I definitely almost started this roast without remembering to change the development percentage to 15%. A much more appropriate development percent for this coffee. That's as close as I can get, so here we go. And of course, we'll be fast forwarding through this roast because watching beans jump and do graph stuff for 10 minutes will get boring pretty fast. So we're fast forwarding. I'll go ahead and remove that fast forward icon there because that will also get old very quick. Something I want to go ahead and note here is that you might be asking yourself, hey, why are we even bothering to do a 100 gram control? Can't we just use the bean curve from the profile as our control? Well, yeah and no. As seasoned coffee roasters know, every coffee behaves a little differently in the roaster. You will have to make some accounting for that and change for it. So I wanted to go ahead and show in real time the 100 gram roast and how it behaved in the roaster, because how that curve compares to our 200 gram curve is going to be a much more accurate and, well, fair representation of how well the conversion works. Because as we can see early on in the roast, of course, we definitely jumped the line with that bean curve. And this is a natural thing that happens with the Link all the time. It does run hot for that first minute or so as it's trying to kind of jumpstart the process. Nothing unusual there, nothing to be worried about. And then we get right back on the curve, and it's doing a great job of following the intended bean curve. As we get closer to first crack here, we will see that it starts to jump the curve a little bit. Again, not a huge deal. We just want it to have a comparison that's fair for the 200 gram. And we should start hearing those early first cracks any second now. I'm going to go ahead and mark first crack here because I am hearing a few good cracks. And that makes sense for this coffee. It's cracking a little hot, but no problem there. This is a coffee I've roasted quite a lot in my testing because we have a bunch of it here at the shop, and it's a great washed coffee that I've tasted a lot, so I know what to expect in the cup when I'm analyzing roasts, and it's washed, so it's very simple in the roaster. There's nothing crazy in the chaff collector. It's a nice, balanced, median for our testing. So I did have some familiarity with this coffee. I did go in having a pretty good idea of how this was going to go, but I do want to point out that this was all done live in one take. All the editing is purely to make this easier for you to see and to make it a little more watchable. But this was all done in one take, 30 or so minutes of the cameras rolling. So yeah, looks like we're coming up to the end of the cooling cycle now, and we'll talk some more. All right, here we are. A little bit of before and after for you. And that is the roast to beat with our 200 gram batch. So now I'll go ahead and load up 200 grams. Right at 200. Gonna make sure to go ahead and empty my chaff collector. Not that bad. Hardly anything on there. You can see a bit in here. As we've got in total, we'll compare that to our 200 gram batch. Now, I need to reopen this profile. Go back to Omni, give it a second to load. Select 204 again. Load it in. Now I'm going to go ahead and make those changes we talked about earlier. This first fan point, I'll set at 1790. Same with the second. This one we will set at 1720. And this last one at 1660. Awesome. And under about this file, I'll just change this to 200 grams. And change this here. I don't want to take any credit away from Sam. We just want to make sure we don't mix it up with Sam's original 100 gram file. Go to Profile Settings. And here under Zone 1, we'll have this begin at 4.5 minutes. And we'll just go all the way to 12 minutes on the ending, just in case. It's not going to happen for us here. Go ahead and set this about -8 or so. 5 would probably be plenty. Yeah, we'll go ahead and stick with 8. And then, of course, change our cooldown speed to the same as our ending fan. And bump up the speed near the end. And go ahead and keep that cooldown low temperature starting a little earlier in the cooldown process. Those are the basics. Then we'll just save to roaster. We don't need to worry about that. That's fine. We'll just save this as Omni 204 200 gram example. Save. Great. And click this button to send to roaster. And we'll load up. There we go. Just want to make sure it didn't fall out. Set our lid on. And we'll double check. Last time I forgot to mention I did increase it to 15%. We'll do the same thing here so we have a nice even comparison.
All right, we're back for round 2, and you'll see the first thing I do when I get back to the computer is pull up the previous roast for a comparison using the comparison tool. And that way we can see the curves side by side in real time. And here we go to do that now. And there we are. That's our 100 gram roast in the light red. And you can see I'm following it quite closely. I'm actually closer to the curve than the 100 gram roast at this point, which I've noticed is consistent across all coffees with this 200 gram conversion. It does follow the curve much closer early on, and I believe that's because that much more, double the bean mass is taking the preheat protocol of the roaster a lot more smoothly. And we're running a little high on the curve, but that's not a big deal. I'm definitely staying just a hair over the curve right now. It's pretty doggone close. And I did highlight that zone so you could see when it's coming up. And again, we're right on the line. We're about as close as you can ask for. And now we're hitting that zone. And again, the creation of that zone was based entirely on the fact that it would almost always start to run hot on me for the remainder of the roast right here. And as best I can tell, that's happening because as part of the back end, the pit has sort of an anti-crashing protocol built in, where when it starts to go high, it pulls back on the heater, but it will only pull back so far in order to help prevent any crashes during, especially later in the roast and in Maillard development. So that zone, we had to overcome that because we don't need any help not crashing with this much thermal mass at play. We've got a ton of momentum built in. And we're coming up on first crack now. Some nice big loud cracks for me. I felt really comfortable marking it when I did, right there with the other one. And at 15%, we're going to cut off at the exact same time again. And you really can't ask for a much closer test than this one when you're doing it live and all in one take. So I was really happy with that. And you'll notice that our beans are moving really nicely right now in the cooling mode. But as they get cooler, even kicking up to the highest fan setting, they do pull back quite a bit and don't move quite as much. But by the time they get to that point where they're much more stationary, we're well below 150 degrees, which is the industry standard for as cool as you need to get coffee beans as quickly as possible. And again, I had to kind of watch this with the settings. I didn't want to get a bunch of beans thrown up and trapped in the chaff collector because, you know, if we lose beans to the chaff collector, that kind of defeats the purpose of having such a large batch. But with the settings I got, I think we managed to walk the line pretty carefully. I typically get 1, 2, 3 to 5 beans in the chaff collector, but I mean, I think that's like a gram or two tops, and you can always pick them out if you're really concerned about saving them. I did want to point out that I have run this 200 gram conversion with this coffee specifically across every single profile pack just to double check it, no problems at all. And I tested multiple other coffees across a wide range of processing methods from anaerobic natural to wet hold. And I have all of that data up on our website in an article. You can see the pictures and the graphs from other roasts. I'll leave the link to that in the description below.
All right, we could not have asked for a better trial run than that. Now, this is always going to be the tricky part because if I just lift this off, the beans are going to spill. So always make sure you have a very good grip. Place your sample tray in front. Pull this so you can see what I'm doing. Now, I've got that in one good hand, this in one good hand. I'm going to lean them both together. And then when it's at a good angle over the tray, start lifting the lid off. Great. Now I can take the top and both hand my link and finish pouring it out just like that. And as you can see, this is our 100 gram sample. So that's our control. And in the blue tray is the 200 gram sample. Pretty darn close. And just for comparison, we'll go ahead and look at our chaff so you can see how much more chaff there is. And this is why you really got to be careful with your naturals and in particular your anaerobic naturals. This much chaff can definitely be a bit of a problem. And this being a washed, it's really not much of a problem. Oh, there goes some of it. And there you have it. And just for the sake of completion, here is our green sample again and our 200 gram sample before and after. And there you have it, folks. How to use the Link Studio software. If you found this video helpful, please show that like button a little love. And if you've watched this video and you decide the Link is the roaster for you, consider supporting us by purchasing it from our store, thecaptainscoffee.com.
We'll have some free goodies thrown in with it, like a free coffee sampler, free shipping, and more. So we've got more videos planned on the link and other coffee roasting topics, so be sure to subscribe and comment below with any questions you've got about the link. Till next time, thanks as always for joining me, and happy roasting.